Good evening, all. Good morning, and good afternoon. My name is Luke Muleka, the founder and managing director of Science TV, a sign language TV station that propagates socio-economic, political, and talent development of persons with disabilities. You can see the logo behind me. Now, I'm recording this small video in response to my participation, just a recap of my participation in the last week's webinar. And what we are looking at is the day, of course, which was the Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And this takes me to, of course, what I'm looking at in terms of how people have treated accessibility in the past and going forward, if it will be treated the same way. Initially, people have been thinking about accessibility in terms of the built environment, getting into a physical building, having the road accessible, and especially if you look at, most of them are looking at persons with physical disability on how they can utilize a certain access or service, but it's actually being thrown to a wider spectrum of accessibility. If we are talking about accessibility, then of course a physical environment still an accessibility issue, but again information is still an accessibility issue, and the digital platform that has been launched, I will say the fourth revolution has also brought up the issue of accessibility and how are people going to relate in terms of accessibility. Let me take a simple example and talk about accessibility in the wider range. When people are talking about this issue, of course, we rush or run to what we call universal design. So what is universal design in that area? Then we're looking at the ability for person to utilize a service or access a service irrespective of their disability, their age, and more importantly, I would say irrespective of their height and also their level of education. That is universal design, that you're designing something that can be accessed by each and every person in the society. When we look at how we are relating and interacting in the society in Kenya or in Africa and by the African governments, then we are looking at how people have been able to, or how the infrastructure has been set out in the transport sector, the road environment. And we go further and we look at accessibility as regards to fundamental rights of a human being. For example, a blind person, how are, or persons with visual impairment, how are items there, how are their rights to property safeguarded? For example, how are our title deeds in this context, are they made in a manner that a person with visual impairment can be able to tell the document they are holding is actually a title, and the acreage of the property they are buying, are they able to tell by just a touch of that particular document? The logbooks, how are the logbooks structured? Are the logbooks structured in a manner that they can be able to tell? Then we look at the other issues in terms of fundamental rights, like the health rights. After diagnosis, let me say a doctor has been examining or a visually impaired person or a deaf person has visited a hospital. How accessible is the diagnosis results in a manner that they are able to access this information without necessarily being passed through third parties? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves in terms of accessibility. How far does it affect on our fundamental rights as human beings and the society where even persons with disabilities live?